All right, so we've got some pretty big news that just dropped.
Yeah. Yes.
And a couple days before Trump's second inauguration, special counsel Jack Smith resigned.
Yeah.
You know, the guy who was leading those federal investigations into Trump.
Right.
He was head of 2 huge EE cases against him.
You know what's really interesting to me is
Yeah.
not just the resignation itself,
Okay.
but the how and the when.
Yeah, it was super low-key.
Yeah, it kind of slipped out the back door.
Like, for real, we're talking investigations that shook the nation. And he just quietly steps down.
Right.
And especially for someone who's been in the middle of,
Right.
such a political and legal whirlwind.
Yeah, he was really trying to avoid making a big splash, wasn't he?
Totally.
All of our sources, the New York Times, CNN, CNBC, and WR News,
Wow.
they all agree that Smith submitted his final report January 7th, 2025,
Okay.
officially left the DOJ just 3 days later, January 10th.
So right before Trump took office again.
Cutting it really close.
Okay, so he resigned right before Trump's second term.
Yeah.
What's the big deal?
Well, remember how Trump had repeatedly hinted that he might fire Smith
Yeah.
if he was reelected?
Huh.
This quiet resignation just days before the inauguration
Oh.
suggests that Smith was trying to avoid
Okay.
that whole messy scenario.
So maybe it's not so quiet after all. Like,
Well-
maybe this was a strategic move
Hopefully.
to prevent, further disruption,
Yeah.
potential chaos.
Exactly. And it tells us something about Smith's character, too.
Okay.
He's known for being a dedicated career prosecutor,
Oh?
someone who prioritizes the work over the spotlight.
So not interested in grabbing headlines.
No, not at all.
Just let his work speak for itself.
Exactly.
But remind me, what were those 2 major investigations about again?
So the first one
Yeah.
focused on Trump's actions to overturn the results of the 2020 election.
Right.
And the second one delved into how he handled classified documents after leaving office.
And get this, both investigations actually led to Trump being charged with crimes.
Right.
But then...
But here's where it gets even more complicated.
Okay.
Those charges were dismissed once Trump won the election again.
Wait, why?
Well, there's a long-standing policy within the Justice Department
Okay.
that they won't prosecute a sitting president.
So you're saying even if a president potentially breaks the law,
Yeah.
they can't be held accountable?
Yeah, as long as they're in office.
What kind of message does that send?
That's a debate that legal scholars have been having for years.
Right.
Does re-election truly give president a get-out-of-jail-free card?
Yeah.
And what does that mean for holding presidents accountable for their actions?
That's a big question.
Huge.
Makes you wonder if this system actually serves the American people.
Right.
Seems like there's a lot of room for potential abuse of power.
It certainly raises concerns about whether everyone is truly equal under the law.
Okay, so we've got Smith resigning under a cloud of controversy,
Yes.
legal charges being dropped, and this whole debate about presidential accountability.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, it is.
But before we get too deep in the legal weeds,
Yeah.
I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier about Smith's final report.
Ah, yes, the report.
Yeah, where does that fit into all of that?
This is where things get even more interesting.
Okay.
Remember, Smith submitted his final report before resigning,
Yeah?
but it hasn't been released to the public yet?
And I bet I know who's trying to keep it under wraps.
You got it.
Trump.
Trump and his legal team are fighting tooth and nail to prevent that report from seeing the light of day.
Why so secretive?
Yeah,
What are they so afraid of us seeing?
who knows?
Is this just about protecting Trump?
Mhm.
Or is there something bigger at play here? Something that affects all of us?
That's a great question, and it speaks to the heart of transparency in government.
Okay.
The outcome of this legal battle over the report
Yeah.
has implications for how much we, the public, get to know about what really happened during those investigations.
It makes you think,
Sure.
are there things going on behind closed doors that directly impact us?
Yeah,
Things we have a right to know.
absolutely. And the legal complexities don't stop there.
Okay.
This case also went before the Supreme Court,
Oh, wow.
and their ruling adds a whole new dimension to the question of presidential immunity.
Hold on, presidential immunity.
Yeah.
That sounds like something straight out of a law textbook.
It kind of is.
Can you break that down for us?
Of course, presidential immunity basically refers to the legal principle
Okay.
that presidents have certain protections from lawsuits and criminal charges while they're in office.
Okay, I'm starting to see where this is going.
Right.
Yeah.
And the Supreme Court's ruling in this case basically set a very high bar for prosecuting presidents,
Oh,
even after they've left office.
Okay.
It could significantly impact how future presidents are held accountable for their actions.
So what you're saying is, even if Smith's report does come out and it reveals some shocking information,
Mm-hmm.
there's a chance that Trump might never face consequences
It's possible.
because of this whole presidential immunity thing.
It's a possibility we have to consider. It's a complex legal issue with far-reaching consequences.
Yeah.
And this is exactly why this whole situation with Jack Smith matters.
Yeah.
Not just for those involved in the investigations, but for all of us.
This is really starting to feel like a pivotal moment in our history.
It is.
It really is.
And it raises some pretty fundamental questions about the balance of power in our government
Okay.
and how we hold our leaders accountable.
So where do we go from here?
Wow.
What are the next steps?
Yeah.
What should we be paying attention to?
First, we need to understand the implications of the Supreme Court's ruling on presidential immunity.
Okay.
And second, we need to stay informed about the legal fight over releasing Smith's report.
Got it.
The outcome of both could have a lasting impact on the future of presidential accountability.
Right.
And by extension, the future of our democracy.
Wow. That's a lot.
Yet this whole situation really highlights how even seemingly obscure legal concepts like presidential immunity can have a real impact on our lives. It's not just some abstract debate happening in courtrooms.
Oh, yeah, it's true. It's easy to feel powerless when you're up against these massive legal and political battles.
Right.
But I think it's important to remember that we, the people, are the ones who ultimately hold the power
That's right.
in a democracy.
Exactly. And that power comes from staying informed, engaging in these conversations, and holding our leaders accountable.
So let's talk about that accountability piece.
Yeah.
You mentioned that the Supreme Court's ruling on presidential immunity sets a high bar for prosecuting presidents, even after they've left office. Can you break down exactly what that means?
Sure. Essentially, the court recognized that presidents need some level of protection from legal harassment while they're trying to govern.
Okay.
But the concern is this ruling might make it too difficult to hold them accountable for actions that potentially cross the line.
So hypothetically, if a president abuses their power, obstructs justice, or even engages in criminal activity,
Right.
this ruling could make it harder to bring charges against them.
That's the worry, yes. And this isn't just a theoretical concern. Think about the potential consequences if a president feels emboldened to act without fear of repercussions. It could have a chilling effect on our democratic institutions.
It's a scary thought.
Yeah.
And it makes this fight over releasing Smith's report even more crucial. If there's evidence of wrongdoing in that report, will it even matter if the legal pathways to accountability are blocked?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And it underscores why transparency is so vital in a democracy.
Right.
The public has a right to know what their leaders are doing, especially when it comes to potential abuses of power.
It's fascinating. This report, it's like this hidden treasure trove of information.
Right.
We're all just on the edge of our seats wondering what secrets it might hold, what light it might shed on these investigations.
It really is.
And it's not just about satisfying our curiosity. This is about understanding the truth of what happened,
Right.
about learning from the past to safeguard our future.
Exactly.
Exactly. It's about making informed decisions as citizens, about holding our elected officials accountable, and ultimately about protecting our democracy.
You know, it's easy to get caught up in the legal intricacies and the political maneuvering,
Right.
but we can't lose sight of the human element here.
These are just abstract legal concepts we're talking about. These investigations, these potential crimes, they have real-world consequences for real people.
For real people. Think about the election workers who face threats and harassment because of claims of a rigged election. Think about the government officials who are pressured to compromise their integrity.
And we can't forget about the potential impact on our international standing.
Right.
If the world sees that our own system is struggling with accountability at the highest level,
Yeah.
what does that say about our commitment to democracy and the rule of law?
It raises serious questions about our credibility on the global stage. Yeah.
And it could embolden other leaders around the world to act with impunity.
So we're talking about potential damage to our democratic institutions, erosion of public trust,
Right.
and harm to our international reputation.
Yeah.
It's clear that the stakes are incredibly high.
They are. And that's why it's so important to keep this conversation going, to keep asking these tough questions, and to keep demanding transparency and accountability from our leaders.
It's a reminder that democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires active participation from each and every one of us.
Absolutely. And that participation can take many forms: staying informed, voting, contacting your elected officials, engaging in peaceful protest, and holding open and honest conversations about these crucial issues. All right, so we've talked about the potential consequences of this whole Jack Smith situation, both on a national and international level. But let's bring it back down to earth for a moment. How does all of this affect you, the listener, in your everyday life? What are the tangible takeaways here?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's honestly something we should all be asking ourselves.
Right.
How does this high stakes legal and political drama actually trickle down and impact our daily lives?
Well, for starters, think about the erosion of trust.
Okay.
If it turns out that even presidents can potentially operate above the law, it undermines our faith in the entire system.
Right. Why should we follow the rules if those at the top don't have to?
Exactly.
It creates a sense of cynicism and disillusionment.
Yeah, and that can lead to apathy, disengagement, and a decline in civic participation.
Oh, wow.
People might think, what's the point of voting or speaking out if the system is rigged against us anyway?
And that's a dangerous path.
It is, because a healthy democracy relies on an engaged citizenry.
Yeah, for sure. And this erosion of trust can also spill over into other areas of life.
Okay.
If we lose faith in our institutions, it becomes harder to address collective challenges,
I quit.
like climate change, economic inequality, or public health crises.
So we're not just talking about abstract legal principles here.
Right.
We're talking about the fabric of our society. The
Exactly.
very foundation of how we function as a nation.
You got it. And on a more individual level, think about the message this sends to young people.
Oh, yeah.
What are they learning about accountability and the rule of law? Are they being taught that there are different rules for the powerful and the rest of us?
It sets a terrible precedent.
It does. It normalizes the idea that those in power can act with impunity.
And that can have long-lasting consequences.
Oh, absolutely. It can lead to a culture of corruption where people feel like they have to cut corners or bend the rules to get ahead.
So it's not just about Trump or Smith or any specific individual.
Yeah.
It's about the kind of society we want to live in,
Yeah.
the kind of future we want to build.
Absolutely. And that's why it's crucial to stay informed, to engage in these conversations, and to hold our leaders accountable regardless of their political affiliation.
It can feel overwhelming at times,
Yeah.
especially when we're bombarded with so much information.
Yeah.
But every little action we take, whether it's vote and contacting our representatives or simply talking to our friends and family about these issues, it all contributes to a more just and equitable society.
That's right. We can't just sit back and hope that someone else will fix things. We all have a role to play in shaping the future of our democracy.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the resignation of Jack Smith and its implications, we want to leave you with this thought.
Okay.
The fight for accountability, for transparency, and for a system that truly serves the people, it's a fight that belongs to all of us.
It's not a spectator sport.
Yeah.
It requires active participation, critical thinking, and a willingness to speak up for what's right.
And even though it might feel like a long shot, sometimes remember that even small actions can have a ripple effect. Never underestimate the power of your voice, your vote, and your commitment to a better future.
That's what democracy is all about. It's a collective effort, a journey we embark on together.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive. And remember, stay informed, stay engaged, and never stop questioning.